Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Hokyoji Sunday Dharma Talk. I'm pleased to introduce Reverend Kyoku Tracey Walen, an associate teacher of Hokyoji. Today, she began practicing Buddhism in 1998, ordained in 2008, and did the Dharma transmission ceremony with Byakuren Judith Ragir in 2015. By the way, I checked with Byakuren today and she's okay in Los Angeles with all those fires, so just for your information. And she trained at Great Vow Monastery in 2008 to 2010. She studied sewing with Zen sewing with Tomoe Katagiri and was one of her successors. Currently, she resides here at Hokyoji and supports it and serves as a Zen teacher also at Clouds and Water in St. Paul. And thank you so much for joining us today, Kyoku, and offering some teaching on Dharma. So thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everybody. Let's see. So I want to start with a recent discovery for myself while chanting the Heart Sutra. And the very first line is Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, when deeply practicing Prajna Paramita, clearly saw that all five aggregates are empty and thus relieved all suffering. I've been chanting that, like many of you have, for quite a long time. But suddenly, I saw it differently. So I'm going to do my best to share, I guess, some depth of understanding that I didn't have prior to the moment of that reading and discovery. Because what I realized is, well, the five aggregates are what I identify with. It's me. And somehow or another, that didn't really come home to me before. And the emptiness of the five aggregates, i.e. me, thus relieved all suffering. And I thought, this has to have something to do with meditation and insight. And maybe I can help myself along here. So hopefully I can help you guys along at the same time. So what does it mean that all five aggregates are empty? And why does it relieve all suffering? Thich Nhat Hanh taught that we have to ask if there's anything in this teaching that has to do with my daily life, my daily difficulties, and my suffering. That's an interesting set of questions to me because as I'm walking around in my daily life, even though I do my best to stay right here, bearing witness and with don't know mind, it's like, well, what it seems like kind of a contradiction. If the five aggregates are empty, why does that relieve all suffering? What implications does that have? Well, here's some of my understanding. So, is there anything that has to do with my daily life, my daily difficulties, and my suffering? The answer to that is a resounding yes. Because as I think we probably understand, how we look at things is not how things are. But the next part, which is, well, what am I missing? And in a basic summary, I'd say what's missing is my understanding of what now is, and that there's nothing but now, including me. This is because the universe is moving very quickly, and because I'm very just um, uh, attached to the idea of me, uh, I can't see clearly. And I think we've all had some insight into that when we meditate. Something changes, something comes out. We don't always know what it's going to be, and we don't always understand it when it comes. But for starters, the words I, me, and mine are misleading. The Buddha is very clear about this. He taught that humans are composed of 5 aggregates: form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. But essentially, Heart Sutra is saying, seeing that that's not me is a crucial understanding that frees us immensely. Now, I think the tough thing about that is we have all these numbers that go with things. So there's the 5 aggregates, but there's also I am of the nature, the 5 remembrances. I'm of the nature to grow old, to get sick, to die, to be separated from everything really that I care about, everyone. So that's still there, whether I'm enlightened or not. That's the world as it is. That's what the Buddha taught. So we usually think of I, me, or mine, but the understanding that we have is faulty. And I'm going to call on my buddy Thich Nhat Hanh to talk about it a little bit. And here's what he says. When Avalokiteshvara declared that eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind are empty, he meant that they cannot be by themselves alone. They have to interbe and with everything else. Our eyes would not be possible without non-I elements. That is why he can say that our eyes have no separate existence. We have to see the nature of interbeing to really understand it. So it's not something that even Buddha can really explain to us. We don't get it until we see clearly. It takes training to look at things this way. And that training is not at all what we're used to. Non-self means that we are made of elements which are not us. During the past hour, different elements have entered me, and other elements have flown out of me. Your happiness, in fact, your existence comes from things that are not you. This is Thich Nhat Hanh. Things that are not me. Mostly because me is not. This is, but me isn't. The teachings, and you have to, or I had to understand that the Buddha was very clear about that. This kind of single nature that we're all a part of. The teachings of impermanence and non-self were offered by the Buddha as keys to unlock the door of reality. We have to train ourselves to look in a way that we know that when we touch one thing, we touch everything. There isn't anything but this, is the way I understand it. There isn't anything but this. The I is like a label that's misleading. The teachings of impermanence and non-self are offered by the Buddha as keys to unlock the door of reality. We have, and this is Thich Nhat Hanh, we have to train ourselves to look in a way that we know that when we touch one thing, we touch everything. We have to see that the one is in the all, and the all is in the one. We touch only the phenomenal aspects, not only the phenomenal aspects of reality, but the ground of being. Things are impermanent and without self. They have to undergo birth and death. But if we touch them very deeply, we touch the ground of being that is free from birth and free from death, from permanence and impermanence, self and non-self. So that means, says Thich Nhat Hanh, that nirvana is the ground of being, the substance of all that is. A wave does not have to die in order to become water. And I found this a particularly helpful sentence. Water is the substance of the way. They're not separate. That's why there can't be an I. We're just not separate. We are just as the water is with the wave. You can't have one without the other. We're all here, one big mob. But we're individual parts of the mob. So this is why we have to sit, because we can't really get it through words. The wave is already water. We are also like that. We carry in us the ground of interbeing, nirvana, the world of no birth and no death, no permanence and no impermanence, no self and no non-self. Nirvana is the complete silencing of concepts. Nirvana is the complete silencing of concepts. We don't need them. We are them. The notions of impermanence and non-self are offered by the Buddha as instruments of practice, not as doctrines to worship, fight, or die for. So Thich Nhat Hanh suggests that we learn to look at the body as a river in which every cell is a drop of water. In every moment, cells are born and die. Birth and death support each other. This is quite different than the way we think things are. And it causes I, me, and mine, which are mistaken conceptions, not me and mine, but it causes what we think is me, daily difficulties and lifelong suffering. The crucial thing about not seeing clearly is it means we're constantly doing battle with reality, and we know what's going to come out on top, reality. And so we keep trying to fix reality instead of understand reality as it is. That helps because sometimes I lose my vigor. It's like, but I don't feel like meditating. This helps me get fascinated and stay fascinated. And I hope it does with you too. So let me keep going here. So how do we bring this all back to my difficulties, my suffering? I want to tap into a author I was recently introduced to by Raven Gumbel of the Milwaukee Zen Center, who recommended a book by Karuna Ketan, who studied and still does study apparently um, with Tibetan uh, Buddhist teachers. He spent, let's see, 20 years as a psychotherapist, business psychologist, and coach. And he lived in Nepal with his family while he studied Tibetan Buddhism for 12 years. So I'll show you the book. Can't see it very well. I forgot to put this in the chat box, but most of you know how to get a hold of me anyway. So if you want to know the title, it's called The Misleading Mind, with the subtitle, How We Create Our Own Problems and How Buddhist Psychology Can Help Us Solve Them. So I found it just the tool that I was really hoping was around someplace because his psychology work and the combination of his psychology work with his practice. And he starts out, okay, or does he start out? Hold on a second here. Okay. Yeah. So he starts out with a story that comes from his teacher. And he related, but by this time he'd become a psychotherapist. He'd left Nepal and he was working in the United States. And some of his Tibetan teachers had come to visit. And one in particular was one that, he knew well. And that Lama and he were talking about the work that he was doing with people and how it was going. And all of a sudden, his teacher stopped, looked at him, and deliberately said, if you're just helping people feel better, there is no benefit. So that really hit him in the face, big time, understandable. He's putting it what he thinks is his heart and soul and best effort into bringing Buddhist practice together with psychotherapy practice. So that really set him back, and he when he kind of stopped being shocked, he asked himself, well, am I mostly helping people in a way that doesn't have to really do with how the universe is and how it works? And he decided that his teacher, because he was Tibetan and he understood that in Tibet, Buddha, actually, the term Buddha actually means lasting, long-term, enduring mental benefit. So he realized that he probably could do better than he was. So he did his best. And what I'm going to read to you is his story about a patient, I guess, or at least a patient and a couple who came to him for counseling. And it gives us an idea about maybe how we can work with people that aren't Buddhists but we can apply what he's saying in our own lives so that what we're really looking at is how to not live the way we normally do, seeking satisfaction despite our dissatisfaction, with no hope of accomplishing satisfaction because of the way we're pursuing it. This is what he's doing looks like. So he starts out by saying that this particular patient, and let's not get too excited about this name, this name he chose for this example was Carl. So this isn't our Carl. This is a theoretical Carl. Carl was a self-admitted control freak with a type A personality. A good day for Carl was a day when Tricia, his wife, kept the house in order. He got all the green lights in his drive to work, and his clinic ran without interruptions to his schedule. He was not untypical. He had a lot of anxiety, and his happiness always depended on how well he managed his anxiety. And so long as people did things this way, he felt he could do a good job keeping his anxiety under control. Carl is a great example of how suffering is always caused internally and how lasting happiness depends on changing how we think, not managing the world or others. Like most control freaks, Carl was actually the one being manipulated by his own anxiety. He was one of the guys who tried to control every potential difficulty before it arose. He expected problems everywhere, and so, of course, his life was full of them. When Carl and Tricia first came to me, Carl was looking for support to help his wife become more efficient, less messy, and better organized. But this didn't fool me. Carl's problem wasn't with Tricia. It was with himself. And my job would be to convince Carl how to handle that. Carl and Tricia argued a lot. They had marital problems. The more Carl dictated how their home and lives should be run, the more Tricia resisted. From Carl's point of view, Tricia's spaciousness was the problem. Spaciness, was the problem. From Tricia's point of view, Carl's obsessive organizing was the problem. They both saw the problem out there, located in the other person, rather than rooted in their own anxieties. From a Buddhist psychological perspective, this incorrect view of the outer world as being controllable and predictable is a source of great many psychological disorders. I want to stop there just to say, I think I never understood impermanence quite like this helps me to. The fact that the world is the universe is perpetually changing so fast, we can't keep up with it. And yet, we keep trying to solve that problem, even though we're part of it. So it gives me a different understanding of impermanence and how real it is and how futile it is to try to make it stop still and stop being important in ways that make me happy, or at least the best I can do about happy. So Carl and Tricia argued a lot. Okay, so okay. So they both saw the problem out there, located in the other person, rather than rooted in their own anxieties. This incorrect view of the outer world as being controllable and predictable is a source of a great many psychological disorders. No wonder we're trying to do the impossible, stop the universe from being the way it is. We investigated what Carl was looking for when he compulsively attempted to control his environment. And he would say, when everything is in order, then I can relax. And Carl had not really thought about the possibility or the dilemma of what happens if everything cannot be in order. He admitted that it was only a few hours a week that he felt relaxed. So I asked him, for the most part then, who is in control, Carl? You or anxiety? He had to admit that anxiety was ruling him most of the time. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Tricia was also at the mercy of anxiety, which was running her life. In fact, it was her anxiety about Carl's anxiety that made her spacey or unable to focus because she was distracted by her worry about upsetting Carl. Eventually, both Carl and Trish agreed to join forces in fighting anxiety rather than fighting each other. Now, that's kind of a big deal because we all do the things that Carl and Tricia do, and we get agitated about them. So being willing to consider another possibility is kind of helps me as a teacher think and as a person think about, well, how can I convince myself not to just do the same old things that I do? And how do I sort of fire up my engines for doing exactly what the Buddha suggested when I don't feel like it, when I want to revert to the familiar, when I'm feeling stuck or out of sorts. By fighting anxiety, they were each agreeing to take personal responsibility for their own reactions or negative emotions. Now, this is where the hard work really begins, rather than blaming the other for creating them. More importantly, they were working to eliminate the root cause of anxiety itself. They came to realize that fighting and resolving particular conflicts, for instance, that a carton of milk was left out on the counter, the toothpaste cap was left off the toothpaste tube, there was dust on the windowsill. They came to realize that this would be endless, these conflicts. These incidents were only symptoms or conditions. The only enduring solution was to confront their agitated mindset. So again, we begin to see that if we look at ourselves through our Buddha eyes, we can actually find ourselves understanding how much our choices handicap us in finding the happiness that we all want. At this point, I want to caution that the modern psychological and Buddhist perspectives, this is our author talking, our psychotherapist, I want to caution that the modern psychological and Buddhist perspectives have fundamental differences around the idea of internal accountability. While this is easily and commonly understood as personal responsibility, this isn't a matter of replacing other blaming with self-blaming. We will look more closely at this in later chapters, but in essence, in the Buddhist perspective, one stops all misplaced or ignorant blame and learns to put the blame where it belongs, on our misperception of things and of ourself, and on the habitual compulsive reactions those perceptions lead us to take. Simply apply a wise, observing perspective to the workings of one's own mind and emotions, clearly and honestly, without prejudice or old assumptions. So this is a kind of confession and realization, I think, in a different kind of way. that what we're doing, which is normal for human beings, can't possibly satisfy us. And so we really, and that Buddhism can give us maybe a different outcome, because we really don't know how that's going to work. We really don't know whether that makes any sense to us, or we're just unwilling to really give it our best shot. So in their case, this wise philosophy, i.e., applying wise observing perspective to the workings of their own minds and emotions, this wise philosophy began at the basic level of being mindful whenever they were being tricked into blaming their partner for their unhappiness. If Tricia left the milk carton out so that Carl had warm milk when he ate his morning cereal, Carl was faced with a choice. He could respond in his old habitual agitated manner or in a new mindful manner. Warm milk was not the problem or the real culprit causing agitation. The warm milk was merely an outer condition. If he needed cold milk to be happy, then his environment was controlling him. Could he deal with warm milk or any unexpected events and cope with agitation? That's a hard to learn perspective. Fortunately, the suggested approach pretty much works pretty well. So there's at least a chance that we can be convinced to do something that will help relieve our suffering, since we can't actually make what we want to do work. If warm milk with his cereal was not a threat to his emotional well-being, then where was the problem? Oh, I'm imagining this Carl and Tricia saying, without agitation, there is no enemy. And thus, without agitation, there was no conflict with Tricia. Now, I'm sure that there's some interesting story to how this unfolded, and that there were a lot of sessions called, "This is how I'm understanding what you're telling me I can be happier with," and uncovering some of the things that were going wrong. But where our author takes us is seeing the big picture. What am I doing on time? Almost out. He says, sometimes people tell me that when they begin to open themselves up to problems, they become not just somewhat problem-oriented, but problem-saturated. As they begin to address the source of problems in their own mind and to see the world differently, their impression is that things actually become worse. Now that's suffering. This sense of things but I know that's suffering. This sense of things getting worse is not so much the result of looking at problems, but the manner in which we look at problems. Sometimes people will interpret the message as, everything exists inside of me, therefore it's all my fault. Well, in the long run, our pain and happiness are in our own hands. I do not believe that there is this is the author. I do not believe that there is a God, Savior, Knight in shining armor, or angel of love that is going to bestow eternal happiness upon us. This is the five remembrances. It's not like we won't still run up against stuff that we don't like. I do not, okay. However, by recognizing the problems arise within us, that doesn't mean we are somehow wrong or deficient, he's cautioning us, or that we should identify with our problems as being who we are. we do have problems, but this does not mean we are problems. We believe, so this is harking back to this idea that things look like they're getting worse when you start out on this. So this is where it helps to have somebody that knows the path and can get us back on the path of happiness, or at least equanimity. This is looking at problems in the wrong way, in a damaging way. Remember, according to Buddhism, everyone has problems, and everyone has the same problem, the suffering of attachment based on our ignorance of the true nature of mind. In order to solve this universal problem, we must open ourselves to our entire inner experience. Well, I don't know about you. I spend an awful lot of energy finding something to distract me from the way I'm looking at the world. We do so not with fear or intimidation. This is the recommendation, not with fear or intimidation, but with curiosity and openness. Now, curiosity and openness, as it turns out, are the first two elements in the 7 factors of enlightenment. So that's encouraging. Maybe I should not give up so easily, is what I said to myself. So the curiosity really is mindfulness. So without mindfulness, focused hopefully to the best of our ability on the path that aligns with how things are. And then the second step is curiosity. Sometimes that's called the pivot to wondering what this arising phenomena within me, wondering what it can teach me, what it needs, how I can work with it, how I can live with it. So we don't deal with a problem through fear or intimidation, but with curiosity and openness, with eager, objective, non-judgmental curiosity of an archaeologist or an astronomer exploring the boundaries of space and the nature of life. Now, I'd have to say this sounds like a pipe dream, but I've actually gotten this to work for me. It's like, first, I hate it, right? Or I'm dissatisfied, right? But it turns out that one way or another, my alert is going to be that I'm dissatisfied. So that tells me, oh, oops, stop here, study carefully for alignment with reality as it is, and equanimity. All right. So we have to pivot. And it's possible. I found out that it's actually possible for me to pivot. I'll find myself a million times a day, maybe less than a million, but pretty many, while not ignoring things, but actually coming back to the moment and saying, oh, that means I need to spend more time with this thing that I'm disliking if I'm going to learn, if I'm going to relieve my own suffering. So we must look at all the aspects of ourselves without worrying if they are good or bad. That sounds impossible, but it turns out that it is possible. Turns out that it is possible. If we only focus on what we like or don't like, choosing to only recognize our good traits or to always blame ourselves for every wrong, then we are still blind. And we close the door on discovering. So this is about ignorance. This ignoring thing we've been trying it for however long we've been alive, and it doesn't work. We can't ignore it long enough. Although, we have some Olympic ignorers. I wouldn't say was ever of Olympic quality, but I'm getting better at Olympic attention of the right kind. He says, when we really just this thing of being choosing to only recognize our good traits or to always blame ourselves for every wrong, that we're closing the door, where we're still stuck in suffering mode. The fact is, we often avoid seeing or admitting our less savory qualities, and we can find it very difficult to accept that the source of our anger and unhappiness is always within. If someone is rude to us, even abusive, isn't our reaction their fault? You done me wrong. This is a hard one because we go there so quickly. No, he says, it's not their fault. It's like the milk and Carl's story. They are the condition, but not the cause. They are the condition, but not the cause. However, the further truth is that we also need to evaluate our own capacities and strengths. This is compassion. Problems come in all shapes and sizes, and very few of us can handle each equally well. What we can handle depends on our capacity. We can increase our capacity through training. So, hallelujah for stupid problems, easy problems, smaller irritations, because in training, we don't want to give up. I remember once when I was trying to learn how to play golf so that I could have a better relationship with my mother. And the golf pro, after watching me, was like, he was nodding his head and he says, okay, go out and play 15 games of golf and come back for your next lesson. It's like, nope, I'm not up for this trip. So that, when we're there with that. And we can choose to just simply say, okay, I'm just going to work with this the best I can. And if I feel helpless, then I may need to take a break and just get my spirits back up, my determination to get back up. And oftentimes life helps us because something uh, uh, comes and displaces our initial dissatisfaction with one that's we dislike even more. So we kind of can appreciate the fact that the very choices that we just automatically make are our best reminder that we still have work to do. It's good to know where you are. But he wants to encourage us. He says, while this book focuses on the practical application of these ideas in everyday life, this is a true spiritual practice that is intended to create a life that is meaningful, rich, and extraordinary. Investing in the nature of our minds is about uncovering and developing the unlimited potential of our minds. Just because we are not fully living in that state of mind does not mean it does not exist, nor that we cannot live there every moment of our lives. So what he says is people are at different levels. And I think I'll stop here because I'm definitely as far as I want to go with my own sense of time limits. So I just wanted to bring this to the table because it's made such a difference for me. And I really I'm appreciating this book where he talks both about the Buddhism he's practicing as well as being a human being. He tells stories on himself and how he caught them, and they're helpful. And the fact that they're combined with Buddhism really is a helpful tool for me to get me excited when I feel worn out, discouraged, or just plain lazy, which is one of my personal favorites. So I'll stop and open it for comments, questions, and do my best.
When you said, Kyoku, that nirvana, somewhere you said nirvana is just not having any concepts in your talk today. Uh, you don't have, it's okay. But it struck me as something I read in the Nikayas. It's been quite piercing for me, as Buddha said at one point, conceiving is a disease, conceiving is a tumor. So it's like, okay, we'll keep that in mind. So, so it's been quite, uh, I've never forgotten that one. So,
Thanks for sharing that, because that's been an important clue for me too. I'm reminded of Bernie Glassman's "Don't Know Mind," bearing witness before trying to do an appropriate action. Those are his kind of 3 ways recommended for making your way through the world, our way through the world.
Hi, Kyoko. Sorry.
I was hoping you'd say something, Mary.
Oh wow, that was great. It feels like that's exactly what I needed this morning. Um, but I have a general question. Uh, Considering I do struggle with sitting zazen sometimes, and I'm kind of reminded studying Buddhism and practicing sitting zazen. Sometimes I'm reminding how kind of poorly I feel it's really easy to kind of move into, is like sort of how poorly I'm doing at sitting zazen. But you did say, and what I read, I'm reading it all the time. You know, you sit to get it. You sit to get it.
Yeah, sitting is kind of our best shot at the conditions for realization. But that doesn't mean it's easy to access. I mean, although I'd have to say, and maybe this is true for you too, carefully observing the restlessness is a good antidote. So it's good that you're noticing it. And observing it is our best good next strategy. Also, walking sometimes helps. When I was at the away for a month at the IMS Forest Refuge, where everybody was silent, you didn't introduce yourself, you ate in silence, etc. It was very helpful to do walking as a regular part of the meditation I do during the day. Yeah, so you might want to try walking meditation when sitting meditation doesn't do the job.
I also wanted
You
to say,
agree?
Mary, that just keep in mind what Katagiri Roshi would say, you cannot, it's not absolute, it's absolutely impossible for you to measure your zazen by your own yardstick. So, so just keep that in mind. So I'm doing bad. Oh, this was a bad one today. Sorry, it doesn't work. Even that doesn't work. Or great. Oh, I just did a great period of zazen. Unbelievably great today. It doesn't matter. It's impossible to measure your zazen by your own evaluation standards. So can't do
Well, yeah, the other thing is that we're already the only place we can be. So, and in a way, yeah, never mind. I can't add to that. Thank you, Dokai. And thank you, Mary. Please call me or, send me a note or something and when you're feeling discouraged.
Hey, Kyoku, this is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
I really appreciated your comments about what we're responsible for in our personal relationships and what we're not responsible for. And I was, it reminded me if folks are ever been involved with Al-Anon, which is a support group for people who have a loved one struggling with substance use disorder. There's the 3 C's. There's you can't control, you didn't cause, and you can't cure. I think those 3 C's are so applicable to all the relationships we had, and it reminded me too about sort of like how we can be still maintain that openness in the face of every human interaction, let alone the difficult ones. So I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, I really appreciate the 7 factors of enlightenment, including curiosity, investigation. That gives me something that I know is fruitful, so that I can be kind of relieved of the anxiety that I'm pedaling backwards. Thank you so much for sharing the 3 C's. What are they again?
We can't cure, we can't control, and we didn't cause. And I think that's relations to a loved one's substance use, but I think it's applicable to a whole host of interpersonal stuff that comes up.
Kind of fits right in with there isn't actually a me. That's separate from everything.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, for other people that are here, Mark is spending a month here, and but you're on your first week of 4.
Yeah, I think today is
I'm sorry, did I say a week? I meant a month.
Yeah, a month. Yes, a month. And I think this week, today is my first week is done.
Yeah, so his personal retreat.
It's been wonderful, and I'm so grateful for this community.
And people should know we're not trying to freeze him to death. I mean, that's not part of our practice down here. I mean, I have my hat, but, Mark's hat is like, holy smokes. And his parka, but so I hope you have a comfortable temperature in your room.
Yeah, it's very comfortable.
Okay. Just want to let people know.
We have a space heater in there for him.
Yeah.
I know how that works.
Okay. All right.
Who else? Come on, guys.
We have about 5 minutes left.
Yes, please.
The first thing that came to mind is just how long does milk have to be out before it gets warm?
Oh, man.
Depends. Probably longer in Mark's room than in mine.
That doesn't seem like a very good story, because milk would have to be out for a long time to get warm, wouldn't it? I mean, that would require a conversation. But more seriously, I'm going back to Katagiri Roshi's talks on karma, where he basically says, don't think of your karma as bad karma. Don't think of your karma as good karma. It's just there, and just to work with it. So the fact that this goes back to the beginning of your talk, where you're interbeing, we've been influenced by so many things. And because of that influence, we've been conditioned to react in various ways. And the good news is, because we've been conditioned, we can also be unconditioned. And because we've been conditioned on top of something. We don't know what that something is, but occasionally we get a glimpse of something that's unconditioned. And so that's kind of why there's no real self. It's because we've just been conditioned in so many ways. But so I think this all applies, except now Mark says, and I'm thinking, man, sometimes you have to deal with really, really difficult problems, really, really difficult people, and it's going to come up with such deep, deep reactions. It's going to be hard.
Yeah, I appreciate how he talks about, start small, not 15 golf games, just a couple of golf games, or, just swinging the mallet and practicing. Reminds me of the movie with the some sort of martial arts guy teaching a kid to first paint the fence, so that he's without even knowing, he's practicing everything, that a fundamental skill that he'll need to be able to get better. So we're all professional athletes in training. Okay.
Okay, I think we've come to the end of our time here. So thank you, Kyoku, for your talk today. We start the winter practice period on Monday evening. And we go for 3 weeks. Generally, we like people to come down for a week, at least 1 week at a time. So that's still spots available if people are interested in that. Then I don't think I don't have a schedule for any events until like April, because we'll be on a spring break. And so next week's speaker is GD, who will be a co-teacher, associate teacher of the winter practice period. She'll be speaking the next 2 Sundays. After her, I will speak, and that will be the conclusion of the winter practice period. So that's the schedule coming up, and we can close with the 4 great vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Thank you all, and have a good week, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.